Welcome to Technado with Don Pizzette, featuring sysadmin expert Don Pizzette, security specialist Daniel Lowry, and Peter.
Hello and welcome to Technado with Don Pizzette. I'm your host, Peter Van Rysdam, and we are joined again, thank goodness, by Don Pizzette. Don, how you doing?
I know, it's the first time I've missed 2 weeks in a row, so I try to miss as infrequently as possible. So thanks for putting up with the B team.
We had said one more week, and it was Technado with Peter Van Rysdam. But
there we go.
Which viewership would have just taken a nosedive. And we're joined as well by Daniel Lowry. Daniel, how are you today?
Doing great, Peter. Thanks for having me back on the show, because it's my job.
Well, thanks for being consistent, Daniel.
Yeah.
And I'm not pointing fingers at anybody.
No, but not naming any names, but his initials are Don Pizzette, right?
Yes.
There we go.
I don't think that's how that works. Yeah. And we are joined by a very special guest today. We have Richard Spires with us, and Richard is the principal of Richard A. Spires Consulting, but so much more than that, also the author of Success in the Technology Field, A Guide for Advancing Your Career. Richard, how you doing today?
I'm doing very well, Peter. Thanks so much for having me on the show.
Yeah, we're really excited to have you, because even those two things that I just listed about you are like, just two of a million things on your resume, and we're really
getting older.
I didn't mean it like that. You just haven't held a job for very long. You're just real short, and not that at all. Well, let's get to know Richard a little bit better in our first segment, which is rapid fire questions.
Who do you work for?
What's new?
Who are you?
What's happening?
What's wrong with you?
All right, Richard, in this segment, what we're going to do is rapidly fire questions at you. You'll see a timer appear on the side of your screen. You'll have approximately 1 minute to answer each question. If you take too long, Peter will buzz you.
Okay. All right.
Sort of like that. And then we'll move on to the next question. We will kind of rotate through us. The first question is coming at you from Peter.
Well, as I alluded to, you've had a very impressive career, including stints as the CIO and Deputy Commissioner of the IRS, as well as CIO of the Department of Homeland Security. So I will not buzz you because I'm afraid of you. But can you tell us about your career journey and how it was that you were able to move into those positions?
Yeah, thanks, Peter. It's interesting. I spent 20 years in the private sector before ever going into government, and did a lot of work early in my career in obviously technology. I'm a double E by training, and got into software development and then into project and program management. So I was running some fairly large programs, mainly in the financial services sector, and happened to know some folks that were over at the IRS, including Charles Rosati, who had founded a firm called AMS, and then he moved over to become commissioner of the IRS. And they were looking for someone to come in and step into running their business systems modernization program, a multi-billion-dollar, 10-year program to modernize some of the core processing functions of the IRS. And they asked me to come in and do that. And by the way, I had never planned to go into government like this, but it was such an amazing opportunity to take on one of the largest, most complex modernization programs ever undertaken. I just couldn't say no to that. And that's what got me into government the first time. And then came back in, and President Obama, I was asked to come back in to take on the CIO role at DHS then.
You mentioned modernization, and when you were at the DHS, that was when a lot of private companies were starting to move into the cloud. And I know there were a lot of concerns early on about government services moving into things like AWS. What was it like inside of the DHS? Because I know the data DHS handles a little bit more sensitive than what most of us handle. So what was that like for you?
Yeah, actually, a great question there, Don. I really did. We struggled a bit because we were at that time. I mean, I started at DHS in 2009, and we were very concerned about the security issues. And of course, many of the business owners of the data, they say, what do you mean we're going to put this data outside of our own data centers? So we took a go slow approach, I'll be honest. We did actually work, though, with a couple companies and created what we called our internal private cloud within DHS. Although now, and not just DHS, but many agencies have, with what's happened with security and the fact that you can now secure things just as well in the cloud, public cloud, as you can in your own data centers, that a lot of those barriers have fallen away, and you're seeing a significant migration of data and systems, government systems, into commercial cloud providers today.
And speaking of security, and well, you also worked for the IRS. I like to marry the two things together and start talking about money, right? Because we were saying that the budget for security in a lot of organizations, not just government, can be a bit anemic up until a breach occurs, and then it's raining cash all of a sudden. Yeah. Is that the same way within the government spheres in your experience?
Yeah, I think I have to say, Daniel, that we had a little bit of that kind of same phenomena. It was interesting when I was there. One of the biggest fights we would have on the budget side was, there's insatiable demand for new capabilities, right? I mean, always. If you're CIO, you're always under pressure to deliver more, but you're also under a lot of pressure to deliver securely today. And so, how do you balance those two things? And I recall meetings in the commissioner of the IRS's office or at the DHS secretary level, really talking about and making presentations on those trade-offs and where do we invest and should we be investing in more in security? But I think it was, I think a seminal moment for federal government was that OPM data breach. If you remember that, there were about 21 million sensitive records of employee personnel data that were breached and exfiltrated. And I think that really was a huge wake-up call. And all of a sudden, I think things kind of flipped, and it became a lot easier to get justification to invest in security.
So I know we're going to talk a little bit more about the book in the next segment, but I'm curious what inspires you to go ahead and write it. Is that just something that everyone that gets out of government has to do, is write a book?
Well, I don't think so, but really two major reasons. The first was kind of interesting. I was asked to speak at a conference, and they said, why don't you do something a little different? And they said, hey, you've had a long, successful career in the technology field. We talk about, being successful in it. What's it take? And so I started it with a presentation. It was very well received. I gave it a couple of other times, a couple other conferences. I said, boy, I should write this stuff down. And that was really what led to me writing the book. And then the other reason, and I talk about this in the book, is one of the recommendations I make at the last recommendation is to give back. I mean, if you've had a successful career, you're getting later in your career, help others, mentor others, be there for others. And I thought, if I write down what I've learned and others have taught me as well, then, it really could be of value to other people in the technology field.
And along those same lines of helping others, you're consulting now as well. Are you specifically consulting with people working with the government and kind of helping them navigate that process, or just general IT and technology things?
General, although I'm actually just starting some work directly for a government agency. I do help a few companies, mainly sitting on their boards, that serve in the federal government space. I'm also working on my second book. So I'm actually keeping myself pretty busy with what I'm doing.
Fantastic. Well, let's jump ahead to the next segment then and talk a little bit more about specifically what is in the book and some of the key takeaways and messages that are in there. And so like I mentioned, the book is called Success in the Technology Field, A Guide for Advancing Your Career, which is kind of right in line with what we talk about here all the time in terms of helping people grow and advance their career in IT. So what are some of the key takeaways in the book?
Yeah, I structured it with 12 recommendations. 3 of them I label as behaviors and 9 as actions. And the behaviors are more things that you should be doing all the time in your career. And I really want to give you guys a shout out. I mean, and if I look at the mission of what an IT Pro TV does, I mean, you actually line up very well with one of the behaviors, which is this idea of being a lifelong learner. And I know it's a bit of a cliche, but it's also incredibly important in our field. And I discuss in the book both formal learning through education and training, gaining certifications where it makes sense to and the like, but I also focus on the informal learning, which is like what should you be doing on the job? What are the skills and abilities that you need to be successful in whatever career arc that you want to have? And I even get more specific about developing an individual development plan as part of your career planning so that, let's say over the next 5 years, you really have a good idea of what it is you want to accomplish over those 5 years in developing yourself, okay? Not just the positions you hold, but what are the knowledge, skills, and abilities that you plan to develop over the next 5 years? It's so important, gentlemen, I feel, to advancing anybody's career in the technology field.
No, I'm really curious because it's a big topic, right? A lot of people are getting into IT or advancing their careers. You mentioned you're working on a second book. Like, how do you follow that up? Is it like how to retire from your IT career?
Yeah, right. Retired. No, actually, I'm going to go back to the government service I did. I have a real passion for trying to help government operate more effectively and efficiently. And by the way, that's not it's not about the policy, okay? Whether it's a Republican administration, Democratic administration, doesn't matter. This is all about whatever the mission of that agency is, how do we be more effective at delivering that? And how do we be more efficient? And so I'm working on a book that really gets to the heart of how you do that in a government agency. It's not all about technology, but as you can imagine, gentlemen, in today's world, almost anything any government agency delivers, it leverages technology in a very significant manner. So it really does tie into effective use of IT and how you do that within a government agency.
Yeah, it would seem to me that it probably wouldn't be the technology per se that's wrapping the feet of the government beast, as it were, to keep it from moving very fast. It would probably be governance, compliance, regulation, oversight, the bureaucracies of a government that just are inherent to it. And I'm assuming you have some pretty good insights.
Yeah, I mean, great point, Daniel. I mean, the way I'm laying that book out, I have whole chapters on governance, on strategic planning, on budgeting. Those are not per se anything to do directly with technology, but they're how do you, as you say, break through the bureaucracy? How do you get alignment across the various stakeholders, both in an agency and also that oversight agencies, to be able to move the ball forward and be able to move it forward much faster than many agencies do today.
Getting back to your original book, one complaint I have about a lot of self-help books is that they normally give you these like nebulous ideas and you're supposed to do something with it.
Be better, Don.
And well, I'm thinking about like 10 habits of successful people and stuff that, you mentioned behaviors. Changing a behavior is actually a really hard thing to do for a lot of people. So one of my complaints is they don't give you like a tangible action item. And so, you said you've got 9 actual items, things, or activities you can perform. Mm-hmm. But I'm curious about how you came up with those because it seems like every IT career is a little bit different. So were you able to find just like 9 common things that work regardless of your IT position?
I talk about that in chapter 1, that my observation is whether you're a manager in technology, you're a practitioner like a software developer, even a product salesperson, there's certain behaviors that will set you up for success. But I think there's also certain actions. Now, a product, as a product salesperson may not be doing some of the things, obviously, than a developer is doing. But there's still actions that, really transcend. And I tried to be very specific. I get your point, right? These generic books. But as an example, I'll give you one example, which is I think everybody in technology field should know how to run projects. Why is that? Because everything we deliver in technology is a project. Now, companies may not call it that, but if you really look at what happens, it's a project. And so the ability to understand what it takes to deliver projects successfully is a very important skill set to have, okay? And so I talk about that and how do you do that? Getting certifications, for instance, in project management, doing task management, then leading projects. Even for product salespeople, I think it's very important that they do that to be very successful in their career.
Yeah, so the book presents, you say, 12 practical recommendations that people can use. And I love the idea of anyone getting into IT going through a 12-step program. I think that is very important. Think about why you're doing this.
You got me there.
Consult a higher power.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. All right. Well, so if people want to find out more about the book, I know you've got the website successinthetechnologyfield.com. And what are we looking at time-wise for the next book coming out?
I really hope, I mean, not a guarantee, but I would really hope that I can get this out published within the next 6 to 9 months is what I'm really shooting for. I've got a full manuscript. I'm working with reviewers. I'm trying to make it, a quality that I really like, and then get the thing out and published.
Fantastic. And if people want to find out more about your consulting business, where would they go for that?
Well, I mean, I would suggest that I don't have a website yet for me, although I'm working on that. But it will be coming up soon under richard-spires.com.
Yeah, I love that.
I should have that up fairly soon.
If you're already too busy to have the website, things are going well.
Yeah,
for the business.
Things are going okay.
That's good.
So.
Well, Richard, we really want to thank you for coming on and sharing some of your insight with us and letting us know, about how you got to where you are and helping those of us that are trying to do those things as well to kind of learn from you. So we appreciate that.
Well, thank you again, gentlemen, for having me on. It's been great.
Fantastic. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about the news from this week. That's coming up on Technado with Don Pizzette.
Welcome to IT Pro TV, an e-learning company with thousands of hours of engaging video training for IT professionals, with fresh content added daily. What makes IT Pro TV stand out? It all starts with our edutainers, who create better than classroom experiences for training you look forward to watching.
So an edutainer is someone who takes a topic, an educational topic, and makes it more fun, enjoyable. My vision for IT Pro TV was to make the product that I wish I had when I got started.
The dashboard is great because you can actually pick up right where you left off. You can also end up seeing new courses that are available to you, and with a membership, you have access to a variety of study tools.
Follow along with virtual labs and test your skills with practice tests. And unlike traditional training, you aren't handcuffed to your desk. Sure, you can watch from there or from your couch with Apple TV and Roku apps, or from anywhere with mobile apps. The training is even available for download. If you're ready to watch and learn with the IT pros, check out the flexible membership choices online today at www.itpro.tv.
All right, welcome back to Technado with Don Pizzette, and thank you so much to Richard for joining us and telling us all about his book and the future of his next book.
I thought you were just going to start with the future.
The future.
Yeah, telling us the future. He's the
Swami. He did that during the break.
Yeah.
He told us, I'm sorry you guys didn't get to hear that, but they have technology at the DHS.
It's going to be awesome.
And you worked out a sweet deal where we don't have to pay taxes anymore.
I like him already.
So
Yeah, he gave us the coupon code for the IRS site. That's
right.
Really appreciate that. Thank you.
code.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah. If you could put a promo code in.
If you have any offers or specials.
Promo IRS 30.
Yeah. Don't give it away. We'll have to change it. All right, a lot of news to get to this week, so let's go ahead and jump right in. Betanews.com has our first article, which is Ubuntu Linux 14.04 and 16.04 each get a decade of support from Canonical. And
Do you got a thing on your board that goes, woohoo?
Oh, I do, as a matter of fact, and it is right
Come on.
here.
Nailed it.
I didn't know how excited we were, so that's good to know. So
I'm pretty excited.
you're excited, and that seems like a long time because that's kind of the same level of support that like Microsoft puts out when it does a new version of Windows.
Yeah, this one's a little bit different though, so we kind of have to put some, I don't know, air quotes around it. Yeah, perspective on it. Microsoft will typically support their operating systems for 10 years. It's just kind of this thing they do. And then if you want more support than that, you've got to pay them, although they're kind of shuffling that cycle around. Canonical's been a little bit different because they're normally 5 years. So you have 5 years of active support for an application, and then it drops off. And that's kind of the end of it, and you're supposed to upgrade. They put out a new version every 2 years, or a new long-term support version, right? They put out a new version every 6 months, but every 2 years an LTS version comes out. So the next one is due in April of 2022. So we're creeping up on that one. We're actually we're like days away from the next version coming out in October. But if you are running an older version like 14.04, that came out in 2014, which means its support should have run out in 2019, 2 years ago. Well, with the pandemic, with IT in turmoil, with all the breaches that are going on, a lot of companies are not actively pushing to upgrade systems unless they absolutely have to. So Canonical has decided to extend support for 14.04 and 16.04 to a 10-year window. And they've actually got that 10-year window applied to all the newer versions as well. So this is kind of going back a few and saying, if you were panicked about some of those old versions, maybe you've got them on embedded hardware or something, then we're going to give you a little bit bigger time. But the thing that kind of doesn't get mentioned is it's still a 5-year support cycle, and then you can pay for the extended support window.
So Canonical's a little coin operated is what you're saying.
A bit, yeah.
And that's fine.
And it's not a ridiculous thing, a ridiculous price. I think it's, for a virtual server, it's like $75 per year. And for a physical server, it's somewhere around $200 per year if you want to continue getting updates.
I don't have to be a Saudi oil baron to pay for this support. Okay, I like that.
Maybe if you have enough servers, I don't know.
There you go. That's true.
So this is not 10 more years from today. This is 10 years since these came out in 2014 and 2016, respectively.
Correct. So 14.04, even if you pay today, they are still going to end support for it in 2024. But that gives you a few more years, right, to be able to pace that out.
So Don, how many people or how many organizations have you been in or worked with or seen where they just kind of ignore, well, thanks for the extra 5 years of me not upgrading this?
You know, I have seen that.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you probably the most egregious violation of this. I worked for an institution that I won't name because.
Aren't you sweet?
But the intrusion prevention servers, the IPS boxes there, ran Red Hat, which I loved.
You do?
But it was controlled under a contract through the IPS vendor, which I probably shouldn't name them either, but it was Juniper. And so
He named names.
And so we couldn't update them. And so they were running these ancient versions of RHEL, and it was super frustrating because there were known vulnerabilities in it, and these were our IPS boxes.
What's that company again? I'm just gonna be over here.
So that's that's what happens is you get these hardware appliances or dedicated servers where you're not allowed to go in and mess with the underlying OS, and now you're totally trusting on that vendor to keep it up to date. They don't always do that.
Or even like just government in general can be really slow to update and adopt new stuff because of how much bureaucracy goes around updating to something. We've got to verify, we've got to validate that it's secure, it does the thing we need it to do. They take forever. There's such a monolith that it's just so slow to go. They might actually outpace the support for the thing, right?
Which is why we need Richard's new book.
That's exactly right.
But
so, is this a response, do you think, by Canonical to RHEL ending support on their end, that they're seeing, hey, look how important this is to people, we need to get out in front of this?
I'm going to say no on that. And the main reason is like with Red Hat, they kind of ended support for CentOS the way that it was, right? So now you get CentOS Stream and that's it. That's not stable enough for most people. And so that created an uproar. But with Ubuntu, you don't have to pay them. Like you can get the latest version of Ubuntu and it's free. So it's just if you want to get support, like being able to actually call and talk to them for support, that's what you pay for. And so it's kind of a different, it's not really apples to apples.
I would be surprised to see a lot of things break, honestly, to just upgrade to the next version so that you can get more support for basically free, right?
Yeah, I mean, so
some things could break. I've seen it.
If you compare 14.04 to like 20.04, it's a world different because now you have C groups and all the things with containerization and stuff that's gone into the kernel. It's a whole different kernel version. Like there's some pretty big changes.
Yeah.
How much to get Linus to answer?
What you got to do is say, somebody said this was stupid, Linus, and that you're stupid.
It's like the bat signal.
And then
for
you
him.
Can't keep him from answering.
What did you say? Yeah. Fantastic. All right, well, let's switch gears to another operating system. This one is about Microsoft. And
our favorite.
This comes to us from arstechnica.com. Larger screen Surface Pro 8 gets its biggest redesign since the Surface Pro 3. The x86 Surface Pro gets a redesign at the expense of accessory compatibility. So it sounds like there's a little bit of trade-off here.
Yeah, just a little bit. I know none of us use Surfaces, right? But we have several throughout the building, and many people do really enjoy them. The Surface has not really changed much from the Surface 3 all the way through the Surface 7. There have been some improvements in the screen, newer processors, bigger, faster storage,
Is
kind
that
of thing.
because if it ain't broke, don't fix it, or they really should have been updating this thing?
No, I think it just wasn't broke. It really was working for what most people wanted, but there have been a few little challenges and things that they're rolling into the Surface Pro 8 that are really cool, right? So some of the benefits, they are changing the screen ratio, so that's different. The old screen ratio sucked anyway, so the new one, it's not 16:9. I know there's two different schools of thought out there.
We like 16:9 because of what we do.
Right. Most other people seem to hate it, so this is probably a good thing. But they are changing the screen resolution. They're also making it a little bit thicker. And this is where the compatibility comes in. So by making it a little bit thicker, it's not compatible with the old keyboard covers. The keyboard covers have been the same for the Surface Pro 3 all the way through the 7. So when you bought a new laptop, you could just move your keyboard cover over. You didn't have to buy a new one.
That is way different than like Apple.
Oh, yeah,
Where
absolutely.
We want that money for
Every
every accessory.
version.
now.
Yes.
Yep. So that's the kind of negative. But on a positive side, by making it a little bit thicker, it cools better. So the fans don't have to run as hard. It runs a little bit cooler. And it has replaceable M2 storage.
Ooh.
You can actually upgrade the storage in the thing. Another very un-Apple thing.
Yeah, and also, don't they have that like S Pen or whatever, or some sort of pen feature as well, right? Which you don't have in Apple MacBooks, Pro.
Yeah, you've got that with the iPad Pro with the
right.
pencil.
iPad
but
Pro, you kind of get that.
it does absolutely nothing.
I guess the question then becomes is the Surface Pro meant to be a MacBook Pro killer or a iPad Pro killer or both, or what's the idea here?
It's designed to be both.
Oh, okay.
That's what Microsoft wants you to use it for. So it's a perfectly fine laptop. Many people use it that way.
Yeah.
And then you pop that keyboard off, and now it's a tablet, and off you go. So it's designed to be both. I don't know a lot of people that buy into the tablet side of it.
Yeah.
Most people just use it as a laptop, but that's what it's designed for.
Yeah, I've got a Lenovo Flex for my personal laptop at home, and I can turn it into a tablet. It works pretty well. I do that sometimes, like if I'm sitting and I'm just like scrolling through the internet. Sometimes I'll flip it that way, but typically end up using it as a laptop.
Yeah.
and not so much a tablet. So it's nice to have. I don't know how much that increases the cost of the device. And I know that you don't get that with MacBooks, and I don't hear people complaining too much. If you like Mac,
People complain about the lack of touchscreen.
do they really? Okay,
A little
I haven't heard it personally.
But there have been a lot of updates out of Microsoft recently because they're building up for the big release of Windows 11 that's happening it's next week, right? On the 5th.
October 5th, yeah.
So, yep. So next week is the big rollout of Windows 11. They're pushing new devices. The new Surface Duo was released.
Yeah.
But, most of the other stuff is kind of niche garbage, not garbage. It's stuff most people don't care about.
It's niche.
but the Surface update was pretty cool, I thought. Worth talking about.
You guys have an RSVP to my Windows 11 launch
party?
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm getting to it. I just got a lot of email ahead of you.
I
That's
think I'm
all.
getting my hair done that day.
yeah, because I want.
So Don, get me one of these things. I'll play around with it for you. Because I looked them up before we came on. I was like, well, how much are these running? They actually do seem pretty cool, like a really nice device. Starts at like $1,100, $1,200.
Yeah.
You can get up to 32 gigs of RAM in it with a 2 terabyte drive or a 1 terabyte drive, but it was like $2,600, which is still less than a MacBook Pro.
It is still
right?
less than a MacBook, yeah. And I'll tell you, and I'll go out on a limb on this one. Like, I don't know anyone who's had a Surface for more than 3 years.
Really?
Like, they just don't seem to last.
I do,
Oh, that's not
but mine. I had the original Surface, but it's literally in a bin under my bed, so I've had it
He's had
since it came out. When did I last fire it up? I don't know.
Yep. And maybe that build quality has gotten better over the years, but
Yeah.
especially with the earlier models, all the way through like the Surface 5, it was
Yeah.
rare to find somebody who got one to last 3 years.
Okay.
What, I like the one. The reason I don't like this one, it's got that little pop-out kickstand, and so it's for literal lap use. It just doesn't work.
Oh,
What is
yeah.
the one that's more built-in that you can still pop it out? It's the silver case that kind of got a. It's still a Surface.
I know what you're talking about. It is a Surface, but it has a different name, and it's designed to be more of a laptop all the time.
Yeah, but it still pops out, and you still get the tablet side of it, which that's the way I'd go personally. But I tend to do sit on the couch a lot.
It's called the Surface Book.
That could be.
I think is what it's called. Yeah.
I'll fact check
We'll go
you.
with that. We'll go with that. As
It's got that crazy hinge that's like
yeah.
slinky or something.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
getting you.
It's-
Surface Book 3,
Surface
yes.
Book, there you go.
You
Yeah,
nailed it,
that's
Don.
the look I like.
Daniel, how would you describe that hinge? I said slinky. It's nothing like a slinky.
It's
Like
nothing like a slinky.
It's like one of those buses that has like two pieces and they
Yeah.
turn the corner.
it's like a bendy straw.
Yeah, there
like
you
a
go.
bendy straw.
Like a
That
bendy
is
straw.
exactly
Yeah,
right.
we've seen a couple of those running around the building here.
Yeah.
Honestly, just arbitrarily, I do not like the way that looks.
I just like the way that functions better
Oh,
because
yeah, absolutely.
in the working
Absolutely.
from home environment, there will be times where you say, "Oh, I'm going to go, sit
Yeah.
on the chair now out on the porch to do this call," and trying to get that kickstand on your lap would just be a
Yeah,
pain
super
in the
pain in the butt. But I look at that thing and I recoil like it's a rattlesnake trying to bite me.
All right, I'm excited. What? That-
For no good reason, too.
That's a weird analogy. All right, I'm excited for this next article because I actually talked with Daniel a little bit about it earlier in the week. So I know he has some strong opinions, so let's find out. This article comes to us from TheVerge.com. The EU proposes mandatory USB-C on all devices, including iPhones, and specifically, I think this is just targeted at iPhones because they're the ones, using the lightning cables that have a different port there. But I don't know, Daniel, we want to start with your anger?
So at first I'm like, what's wrong with Apple? Why do they always got to do something different? And, and then I actually ended up reading their response to this, and I thought it was pretty level-headed.
Apple's response?
Yeah, Apple's response to this, where they said that this will stifle innovation. I said, okay, it's a bit of a boilerplate answer, but there might be some truth to that. Because if you're now dictating to me governmentally that this is what you must have and you can't do anything else, well, all of a sudden my libertarian views start coming up and go, well, who are you to tell me what I can and cannot do with what I'm building? And I don't like that either. So I think that Apple might have actually a leg to stand on with this. Don't force people. I get what you're trying to do, trying to reduce waste, but do that through programs of, hey, let's reduce waste. If you would, please start using more USB-C. That way we can, consolidate down into one form. But we're not going to force you to do that because we don't want to stymie innovations and we don't want to tell people what you can and cannot do. Liberty is better.
But to play devil's advocate or EU advocate, they did ask first and
I'm sure.
said, we'd like you guys to move to this. Here's why. We're filling landfills with unnecessary cables. People are having drawers full trying to figure out different devices. You think back to old smartphones, you have, everybody had their own thing.
Oh, yeah.
Now it's kind of everyone's gone this one route except for the one guy. So
I was about to say, well, who is not USB-C other than Apple at this point?
get on board, Apple.
And I shall rebut.
Okay, please do.
So, because when I read Apple's comment, my thought wasn't, I think they have a point. Mine was, well, that's total bullshit. and there's two reasons for that. So one, Apple's been using Lightning connectors for over 10 years now.
Yeah.
Right? Obviously, they have not innovated in 10 years.
That's
that
true.
connector has not changed. They increased the speed a little bit.
Yeah.
But then they gave up on that right away and flipped over to USB-C on the iPads. So
That's
they're
right, they
already using USB-C. So don't give me crap about innovation.
Okay.
That's like pretend.
It's a theoretical argument. It's not necessarily like an applicable argument.
Because they're saying we could come up with something that is this
Right.
tiny single pin.
Right, because then you've defined a standard regulatorily, right? You're saying this is the standard for EU countries. You must use this.
Yeah.
And is that the way it is with power? Like, is that regulated by the government that you must use those weird plugs that they use over
220s.
there, those different ones?
So it's not required, but it's kind
It's
of one of those
adopted.
things where
Universal. Yeah.
right, and it's such a required service by people that you
if
really
you don't
can't
play
support.
ball, yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
So maybe just through more pressure. And if the stinking Mac and Apple lovers out there would stop thinking that everything they do is vomiting gold.
Well, no, if the lighting's so great, where's that on my MacBook?
That's another great question.
Yeah.
Right? I think that cable right there is a prime example of them just kind of like doing whatever they feel like doing.
Yeah.
But I don't want to stop them from doing whatever they feel like. They're their own company.
Yeah. Well, so the real reason that the Lightning cables exist is because of the MFi program, right? The Made for iPhone program. That Lightning cables have a little identifier chip in them. And so,
Do they really?
Yeah, they do. So when you plug in an iPhone or whatever with one of those Lightning cables, it knows whether that's an MFi certified cable or not. And there are some devices that will be rejected. And this was a big problem several years ago where certain chargers wouldn't charge your phone. And it was because they weren't MFi. So
Screw you, Apple.
So
It'll say
Apple
this
makes money, but-
device, this accessory is not supported. It'll say on your
Gotcha.
phone.
But the real nail in the coffin on this one is if we rewind back to 2009, all the cell phone manufacturers got together, right? And they mentioned this in the article. Apple, Samsung, Huawei, Nokia, they all got together and they said, all right, we're going to team up. We're going to pick a common standard. We're going to do better
Gotcha.
on these chargers. And so Huawei, Samsung, Nokia all switched to micro USB. Apple stopped building the cable into their power block. So you could use anybody's power block, but you still had to use Apple's cable. They stuck with Lightning. And so Apple felt like they did enough by giving you a USB port on a power block and still
you
using their own
kidding
cable. No, this is fact. Fact. Not Don made up like normal.
You're not you're not helping my case of like trying to learn to love and live with Apple products.
No, I use the hell out of Apple
I
stuff.
know you
so.
do. I know. So, which even makes it more credible because.
So here's my guess of what's going to happen here is that we've been hearing the rumors forever, and I mean even up to this iPhone 13 just coming out, that we're going to get this portless iPhone. It's going to have no cable. It's just going to be NFC. So I think that's the double birds that Apple's going to give to the EU. Go, well, you know what? The no cable. You get no cable.
That's
now.
right.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens. With the last version of the iPhone, I think it was the iPhone 12. Apple stopped including a power adapter. Like, hey, we're going to save the planet by giving you less. And so the way it was positioned was, hey, you've already got a phone charger, just reuse it; it'll be fine.
Well, wireless charging is now.
But
do you think that they could like form fit the Lightning into a USB-C connector?
Well,
and
you've
maybe
seen
just
those.
go that
Don't
route?
they have cables that it's like a little adapter that flips down
Oh yeah,
on it?
so yes, I have that actually.
Yeah, so I mean, maybe something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that increases the cost of the cable. But if you think about it, you've got things like your USB-C is just a connector, right?
Correct.
So there is the USB 3.1 protocol or whatever, 3.2 now that runs on top of a USB-C connector, but there's also Thunderbolt that runs on top of a USB-C connector. So whatever software innovation Apple has can be done on USB-C, and that's evidenced by the iPad and the MacBooks that are all USB-C right now, right?
I will say that I love USB-C for my phone. I hate it for my laptop.
Yeah?
Yeah, just because of like how a laptop gets used and typically abused. It's really easy to like break the port or break the cable itself.
It is
and then
smaller.
You got this janky thing going on, and that was true with when I had a MacBook. And it's
I did
true
like
with
that
this
MagSafe,
Man, that was
magnetic one.
see that.
That
Was a great product right there. They should have never lost.
And you're
that.
right. That's the innovation that we're going to lose.
I want that back.
Well, I'm shocked that I expected Don to be on the same side as Daniel there of screw you EU telling me what we can do.
I've kind of resigned to the fact like the EU is going to tell you to do stuff anyway.
Sure.
Like, that's what they do. Like
Doesn't mean we should agree with it.
Yeah, like they don't have freedom of speech. There's
F you, Don.
like the VAT is this incredible tax that applies. They have all sorts of things that they force upon people.
Don has given up.
When are you moving?
Or the RHOC certifications that all equipment has to go under, and like there's a whole bunch of stuff. So this is just one more regulation, but I don't want people to feel like Apple is the victim here because Apple is a business making money and they don't care about the customer.
And if I came across as like trying to the only reason I singled out Apple is because the article did. I meant that across the board, honestly. You shouldn't be like government shouldn't come in and tell me how I should build a product. I should be able to get to do that.
So
if I want the battery to explode next year, I should be allowed to do that.
I'm building.
Can't get on the plane
I'm
with it,
making
but,
phone bombs all day long.
now we know where Don was the last 2 weeks. He was house hunting in Finland.
Yeah.
There we go.
So, all right. Let's move on to our next article from TechCrunch.com. Let's Encrypt root certificate is about to expire.
It's about time.
And it may break your devices. That's not good.
Yeah, Let's Encrypt is incredibly popular because you can get free certificates, right? In the past, you used to have to go to vendors like
Thought and
it's hard to remember the
VeriSign
names.
or
I had to
whatever.
do it so long. But Thought and VeriSign are probably the two biggest ones. There's plenty of others that are out there like DigiCert, and you had to pay every year for these certificates, and that was a kind of an arduous process. Let's Encrypt changed all that. Now you can just generate certs whenever you want, and people trust them, and it's
like
great.
the Oprah of certs. You get a cert. You get a cert.
You just reach under your chair and there's a CA. However, they've been around a long time. And so it is time for one of their root certs to expire. They've already issued out new ones years ago. And so 99% of us are all going to be just fine. And this isn't a big deal. But every time this happens, right, there was a root CA that expired 3 or 4 years ago, and this happened. You'll find embedded devices, things like webcams or video game consoles or things that aren't automatically updating don't get the new root certs. And so when their current root cert expires, they no longer trust those certificates and you end up with a lot of breakage. That is likely going to happen. Now, the last time it happened, it was a private CA that sold certs. This is the first time it's happened for Let's Encrypt, which is wildly popular because it's free. I fully expect this to be a lot more visible when this happens.
Now, when they say this is going to break stuff, they just mean that you're going to go to that website on the device, or that device is going to try to reach out to that domain, and it's going to say, "Oh, I need your cert." It's going to come back and go, "I don't trust that." You're not going to be able to make that connection. That's what they mean by breaking it.
No, it's going to be like Y2K. Planes will fall from the sky.
So I can give you a few examples. I had a BlackBerry that this happened to, so this already dates the story. This was a long time ago. And basically, I was no longer getting email and messages. Because it couldn't connect to the server, the email server that had my information to be able to send out. And so I just stopped getting email until I did a firmiware update on the thing.
And Don was like, man, this has been a good week.
And
Still slow.
So, that's one thing that can happen. You can see, you might not be able to log into a service. You might have a web page you can't get to.
That's typically how I encounter this from time to time. It's like, oh, the certificate is expired. Danger. It might be, man in the middle attacks, and it kind of gives you all that hinky stuff, and you got to accept it. Yeah. Can you just say, I accept the risks, download the CA and say, trust this?
Well, sometimes you can, but on a lot of mobile phones, they've locked the certificate store, and so you cannot update the certificates. There's several Android phones that are no longer supported, and they do not provide access to the certificate store. So you would have to root the phone to do it, which already blows security out the window. Yeah. So those are some challenges, but I wanted to mention it here on the podcast because this is happening today. So today is the day, Thursday,
not tomorrow.
What is the date today? The 30th. So Thursday, September 30th is the day this certificate expires. So tomorrow, or after midnight UTC, so that might be sooner than tomorrow. But tomorrow, if something's going weird on your network, the first thing that should pass through your mind is, could a certificate be causing this? That might help you save a lot of troubleshooting time tomorrow.
Well, no one's going to be able to hear this episode then because that's the day.
Now, I did read that if you have like an older phone and it's causing an issue, use Firefox because it uses its own trust. It doesn't use the standard trust. They have one baked in. So a little workaround. There
are some web browsers and some applications that do their own, which also leads to the problem that you might have an application that uses its own certificate store and isn't updated.
That's true.
What should happen is the EU should tell us exactly what certs.
You will use this cert, or you're going in the gulag.
I feel like
there you go. And you can only update it
Can
via
you imagine
USB-C.
a gulag full of people that just, what? Oh, are you using that bad cert store, huh? That gets you.
Yep.
I feel like you guys being a little extreme now. All right. Well, we have got another article to get to, and this is a little bit Deja news. It's a lot listener mail intro, or listener mail as well. So let's go ahead and play that intro.
You've got mail.
All right. So last week we talked about ExpressVPN, or is it Express?
Yeah, ExpressVPN.
Yeah, ExpressVPN. And we had Rahul Vasist write in asking if we can talk a little bit more about one of the elements of that, because there were a couple things that they had that were interesting with ExpressVPN in the last week, but one of the big things, and this is from the Washington Post, is 3 former U.S. intelligence operatives admit to working as hackers for hire for the UAE. And I mean, not that we glossed over that in the story, but we were focused more on the ExpressVPN side of it. So this is the kind of thing that puts up little bells, and how are these people not, as Daniel said, in the gulag here?
Well, I believe they are now. So so that's
I thought they were fine.
No, yeah, they were.
Were they just given a fine? I knew they did a...
Yeah, they are fully cooperating, and therefore...
Okay, they certainly didn't do a not guilty. They did a plea agreement.
Would this be considered treason? Was this
that's what I was thinking.
Some sort of treasonous?
So here's the thing.
I guess we're not at war with them. So
every country has a cyber warfare division now. That's just the world that we're in. And some countries use it for... Well, I was about to say some use it for good, some use it for bad, but I don't think any of them use it for good at this point. I think every country uses it for bad. But some are a little more bad than others, doing things like assassinating journalists, which is not...
Correct me if I'm wrong, bad?
I believe frowned upon in most nations, but not all. So here's an example of where you have these 3 former U.S. intelligence operatives. So these are people that worked for the U.S. government, were highly trained, very good at their job, that then went and did hacking for hire jobs for the UAE over in the Middle East. And the UAE was using their skills to compromise phones and basically access people's text messages, phone calls, email history all around the world, in countries all around the globe. They compromised Apple with some 0 days that allowed them to be able to access iPhones, as well as several Android phones and so on. So they were using this to monitor activists and journalists, and so generally bad stuff, right? So this is bad, but you might say, well, that's what these guys wanted to do, right? It's they can pick who they want to work for, and if they want to go work for them, that's fine. However, there's this little notice, this disclaimer that I always have to click on when I'm downloading updates from Cisco and other places where it says, do you certify that you are in compliance with the United States encryption or cryptographic export regulations? There are regulations that say we are not allowed to export strong encryption to other countries. Well, these 3 former agents, by going over and doing this hacking for hire, we're taking tools over with them that use strong encryption, and that broke the law, broke that regulation. So what they were doing was absolutely illegal, and it kind of shows that line that red teamers have to deal with a lot, where at what point do we become white hat hackers, or what point do we become ethical and non-ethical, right?
Like a lot of people will work in both spheres where they're like, yeah, I'm a cybersecurity expert by day for company X, but by night I'm selling my services on the dark web to give you passwords or whatever. So there's both of those things. You see that from time to time. There's kind of mercenaries that they're out there just trying to make a buck. But ultimately, they knew this stuff. They even said as much as yes, we basically ignored the warnings that we knew were there. They can't even claim ignorance in this.
See, probably like me, they've clicked on that accept disclaimer many times. It means nothing. If you're
going to the UAE, who we're friendly with, but not necessarily allies per se.
Yeah,
and
we're acquaintances.
Yeah, we're friendly neighbors. We have a good working relationship. Not going camping with them, but what are you going to do? And you're going to take that level of technology and expertise over to them, and then they're obviously going to weaponize it against us. Well, you know that's going to happen, and so you kind of got what's coming to you if they decide to sanction you for it.
Yeah. So you said they just got a fine.
I don't know if they got a fine or not. I guess
that's
Peter
that's the one we talked
part.
about last week. I thought with ExpressVPN, but somewhere the Rosenbergs are going, hey, we would have loved a fine too.
Yeah.
It says they've agreed to pay nearly $1.7 million to resolve criminal charges. I didn't see it in the article. It's in the byline right under the headline, so I don't know how I missed that.
There was something about how they agreed to basically forfeit any future work that they might have. They've lost their secret clearance, their top secret clearance, and they can no longer get that. I mean, who would trust these people at this point, right? As far as that kind of thing goes, you're pushing state secrets across the pond there. Not a good idea.
Well, before we move on this one, I wanted to ask a second question, because we had someone write in last week, Emmanuel Davis, after we talked about the concerns with ExpressVPN last week. He said, he is an ExpressVPN user and it is now concerned about it, understandably, and wants to know what you guys use. So I use the VPN that you put on my computer, but that's why I chose it. So what do you guys use?
Wait, did we talk about how this ties into ExpressVPN?
We talked about it last week. Yeah.
Okay, because one of these guys works for ExpressVPN.
Yeah. Works.
Oh, I thought they fired him.
No, they stood by him, I believe.
Well,
you talk about your VPN, and I'm gonna double check.
You fact check that.
All right. I think I've said it on the podcast before that you cannot trust any VPN providers, and I'll stand by that. VPN providers, you don't know where these companies are. When they say they have a no-log policy, I think we've seen with Proton Mail, no-log policies are BS, that we can't name the employees there. You just don't know anything about these VPN providers. They're not to be trusted. And so if you're counting on that VPN provider to keep your data secret, well, you're putting your eggs in the wrong basket. If you're just trying to access Netflix in another country, that's a different story, right? They'll do that. They can fulfill that promise. But they can't keep your data safe and private. They're not really motivated to do it either. You just pay them and that's that. So for me, I do actually use a third-party VPN provider sometimes. I have an account with AirVPN, so it's airvpn.org. They're pretty transparent. They have some great test utilities. That's why I use them, because I usually use it when I'm doing a demonstration for somebody, or if something is being blocked on a network and I'm just trying to get out. I'm not really worried about my data privacy. I'm just trying to get through some other obstacle. But when I'm concerned about my own data privacy, I use my own VPN. It's really easy to spin up an Amazon EC2 instance. You can do like a T2 micro. It doesn't even have to be a big one, a really, really small instance. You can do it in the free user tier and drop that into EC2, just a standard Linux AMI image. You throw that one on there, do OpenVPN, and you're off to the races. You can even set up port knocking. So it's invisible unless you hit a certain port, and then all of a sudden your VPN goes active and you can remote in and go. So really simple to set that up. I've ran one of those for years and years, and that's usually what I'll use because that's something I trust. I know that system. I'm the one who set it up.
On that, like a T2 micro, how much is that running you per month to keep that up and running?
So if you have to pay for it, like if you're like maxing out a T2 macro or
asking
micro,
for a friend,
then I think it ends up being like $11 a month.
Okay,
or somewhere.
Yeah,
that might be high.
So let's say it's $11 a month. Honestly, if you just kind of do the math here real quick, $4 or $5 a month, you typically what we're seeing with VPN connectivity, right? Subscription model versus $11 a month. One gives you no security, the other gives you actual security.
Yeah.
Kind of worth the money at that point.
But if you just do a new account and do the free usage tier,
yeah, that'll last you a while.
And it'll cover a micro for the whole time. So you basically get it for free at that point. Yeah. But I will remind everybody that VPNs like this, they don't protect you end to end, right? If I bring up a VPN tunnel and I go to Netflix, well, I'm secure all the way to the VPN provider, and then I'm just dumped on the internet and off to the destination. So VPNs are really only useful if you don't trust the first hop. If I'm at a hotel, if I'm at a conference, I don't trust those networks. So I'm at an airport, I don't trust that network. That's where a VPN is useful, right? But if you're trying to get a secure connection all the way to a destination, they don't do that unless the VPN provider is your destination. So that's where work VPNs. Peter, you mentioned the VPN I put on your computer.
Because I'm connecting to the local network here.
Right. Yeah. And that will secure your access to the stuff here in the building. But if you browse the internet on it, that's not secure.
Because security past that is basically up to HTTPS at this point, right? Is that they're using secure protocols and secure countermeasures to make sure that your data as it comes in is good.
I thought I could do anything because I was on a VPN. Is that...
By the way, we need to see you in Philip's office a couple of logs.
When I get those fishy emails, I'll just let me start the VPN and then click this link.
Other options, you could pretty easily run a VPN server off your computer at home, a Raspberry Pi. I've done that as well. I used to have a Raspberry Pi set up that would I could drop it wherever. It was kind of like a pen testing tool in a way. I could drop it wherever, and it would do a reverse tunnel, an SSH tunnel back to my laptop so that I could access that network. I'm trying to say this in a way that doesn't sound nefarious, but
no, I did it as well. I used a Raspberry Pi Zero. It makes it really easy. You just plug it in, bam, it just creates that reverse shell back to. I actually did an encrypt. I didn't do an SSH tunnel. I did Netcat, but I used SSL encryption through that Netcat connection back to AWS.
We are a little over time.
Whatever. We're talking cool tech stuff.
We are talking. That's why I wanted to let this go.
The fun sponge over here.
Sorry, I'm like the EU. We want to thank Emmanuel and Rahul for sending those questions in because we definitely did want to talk about that. And to give you a quick update, this is from Reuters. The people that work at ExpressVPN are very upset that the company has given their backing to this guy who is Dan Gierek, I believe. He was named Chief Technology Officer in August, and according to an internal email at the time of this publishing of 4 days ago, he remains in the post.
Well, there you go.
So they're big fans of his.
I love the Gierek.
Right. I'm gonna send shirts to Rahul and to Emmanuel as a thank you as well. And if you want to get a shirt, send in your suggested articles or questions, and if we cover them on the air, we will hook you up as well. All right, we do have one last article to get to, so let's get to that real quick in our next segment. All right, this one is called Autodiscovering the Great Leak. And I read this article and was kind of confused, so I'm hoping that you can help me down a little bit. I mean, what I seem to understand here is, let's say you own Technado.com. If I then said, all right, I'm going to buy Technado.net, I can set up something and capture some credentials and things?
Not quite, no.
Okay, so help me out.
All right, so 18 years ago... Microsoft Exchange 2003 came out, and it introduced a feature called Autodiscover. Autodiscover has become a key component of all Microsoft Exchange-based email servers and the online, like Outlook.com and Microsoft 365. It's used by applications like your email client on your phone or Outlook on your desktop to be able to automatically find the server and server settings. And the way it works is you type in your email address and it looks at your domain name. So if I type in don@technado.com, it says, all right, well, technado.com is your domain. So let me go and see if it has an Autodiscover file, and it will try and access technado.com/autodiscover/autodiscover.xml. And if it finds that XML file, it has all the information on the server. So what ports to use, what server names to use, what encryption standard to use. So your client automatically configures itself. It's kind of cool, right? Back when I got started with email, this was back in the 90s, you had to know, all right, what's my SMTP server? What's my POP3 server? What port does it use? That was all information you had to manually put in. Now it's automatic. Well, the thing is, they support more than one URL. The URL that I gave was kind of the most common, but there's also, like, it could do autodiscover.technado.com/autodiscover, blah, blah, blah. And so clients rotate through each of these URLs hoping to find one. Well, if they don't find any, it turns out they start trying all sorts of weird stuff. Like they'll drop Technado. And so they might look for autodiscover.com. Well, that's a whole different domain. And so a security company, which was called Guardicore, there we go. Guardicore, they actually found where they went out and bought a bunch of domains that were like these they call them failback addresses for when the other URLs don't work. They bought things like, I don't know, they get autodiscover.com?
They bought autodiscover.com.br, autodiscover.com.cn, .co, .es, .fr, .in.
All the countries.
So they bought like a bunch of autodiscover. Whatever they could find.
Did they buy the
Did they get .do? I do not see .do, sir.
Technado is
Grab
is much more secure.
They didn't get autodiscover.tv either, but they did get autodiscover.online, .me.
.cc.
So they got a bunch.
Yep.
So they brought up a web server and created the Autodiscover XML file in there and then logged access to it. And while they ran it, I think it was just like for a month, they got hundreds of thousands of connections from clients all around the world.
Now, not hundreds and not thousands. Hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, it was like 370.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Windows domain credentials, 372,000.
Yep, and so that's where it gets worse. So not only are they now getting all of these clients connecting to them, that gave them a target, all right?
Right.
So they thought, how can we exploit that? And they said, well, all right, these clients are going to connect and they're going to try and do token-based authentication, which is pretty secure. Well, they sent back a message saying, no, we don't support tokens. We need you to do basic authentication over HTTP.
It was like, cool.
And it was like, cool.
So that means were users submitting or putting in their passwords, or the system was doing it automatically?
The users would get a pop-up saying the certificate for this site isn't recognized. And they would just click yes, because that's what users do. Yeah. They would click OK, connect anyway, and then their username and their password were sent in plain text to this security company. Now, it was
base 64 encoded, Don, which is really difficult.
That's like the old ROT13, right?
Yeah. Well, like arbitrarily easy to.
Yeah.
They called their attack the old switcheroo.
Yeah, because they were able to switch you from using secure authentication to basic. Now, Microsoft has been in absolute scramble mode. They haven't really come out and said a lot about this, but some interesting announcements have come out of Microsoft. So first off, they've started buying up domains like crazy. They're buying as many domains as they can that could possibly be.
Yeah.
That's one answer, I suppose. So that's one thing they're doing. The second thing is they had announced that they were going to be ending support for basic authentication, but when the pandemic hit, they pushed it back into, I think, 2023 or something, 2024, off in the future. Well, now they've come out just in this last week and said, we're moving that back up again. We're going to remove basic authentication support. And so they're doing all these actions which basically say Microsoft really screwed the pooch on this one, and now they're trying to fix it.
Nothing like a good security issue to light a fire up underneath somebody.
This one's embarrassing.
Yeah,
really.
Bad. Yeah. It's amazing it was this long before it was discovered.
If you think about it, this failure has been around for almost 20 years.
Yeah,
that's crazy. Because it's a pretty simple, like, just someone had to think, and a lot of times that's what security disclosures end up being. Is someone went, well, what is that doing?
Yeah, that's weird. How can I use that?
Yeah.
as a
Well,
separate
because
thing.
honestly, most people are just taking the service for granted that I need to do X, Y, or Z. It does X, Y, or Z. Great. It does what I need it to do. And then they move on with their life. It takes someone to go, that says that's what that's doing. Let me look into that a little bit deeper. They start reading documentation. They go, what's this? What's this about HTTP authentication, fallback, doing this domain filter? Okay, that seems like it'd be a problem. Let me check and say, oh, yep, that's a problem.
Now, I don't have any insider connections on the Microsoft security team, but I can tell you one thing that I know they're doing, or they should be, or they shall be fired.
Yeah.
They
Crapping their
need
pants.
They need to look, especially for Autodiscover.com. Who owns it?
Right.
Guardicore doesn't own it. It's not on their list.
Right.
Somebody owns Autodiscover.com.
They sure do.
And not just who owns it today, but they need to look at the 17-year history. Who has owned it in the past?
Because if a nation state owns this,
Yeah.
you've been getting ranked.
Because Guardicore is going to put out the blog.
Yeah.
North Korea is not going to put out the blog.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're gonna
You
sit
put out
back
a
and-
blog about this, you'll never put another blog out again.
Yeah.
And really any other thing. So the thing here, though, is that technically it's not really Microsoft's fault because it's not the Exchange server that causes the problem.
Right.
It's the clients that do this weird failback, right? So we're going to see a lot of email clients get updates in the next week or so that are going to be fixing that to say like, hey, if we don't find it in the standard domain, we don't move outside of the domain. If it's not under technado.com, then I give up.
We don't go any farther.
Right. Don't go to .com. That's
Right.
stupid, right? But that's what they do
And
right
then
now.
part 2 to this mitigation would be to firewall rule the crap out of this thing, right?
You know, you could, but who does that? Who has outbound?
Well, I mean, if you know, you do it all the time when it comes to malware, right? You say, we do not touch these domains because they are known bad. We sinkhole this S.
Well, all right. So you could, I suppose, if you did outbound DNS
Right.
filtering,
Yeah.
then you could. But I don't know. I mean,
Well, I mean, Guardicore actually created a list of known, what was it, the Autodiscover domains, and said, just add this to your sinkhole list because there's no
Yeah.
reason it should be going to this.
I would argue though that outside of schools,
Yeah.
very few companies do outbound DNS filtering.
Really?
I just don't. It's not that common. Like we don't do it here.
In CISA Plus, they tell you that is a common, that is what you do.
Well,
That's what you should be doing.
Now, you and I work together in an insurance company, and we use WebSense there.
We did. For content filtering, though, right?
But that's how you would block a domain.
Yeah,
You
it
know,
is how
so-
you would block that domain. Yeah, I would assume if it's not work related, it shouldn't be allowed.
Yeah.
We use an allow list instead of a deny list. Make it a whole lot easier. These are the allowed domains.
We'll dig into this on Deja News next week, guys. Because
If you're out there listening and if you do any kind of allow deny when it comes to domains, let us know. Put it in the comments. I'd love to hear about that.
how do you guys work on this?
And make sure to click like or follow, subscribe.
Yeah, do all that business.
And if it pops up
hit the
and says-
notification bell.
If it pops up and says re-authenticate, just go ahead
Yeah,
and hit
just yes your way through that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Nothing, no big deal.
Or if you want us to test your servers, just send us your username and password. And
We'll be happy to pen test that internally.
Please. All right, we've speaking of security and your network exploding, we have a webinar coming up: protecting against mobile security threats in a bring your own device environment, understanding the current mobile threat landscape, and that is with a friend of Technado, Victoria Mosby, who is joining us for that one, along with Mike Roderick. Thursday, October 7th, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Check it out at itpro.tv/webinars, as well as all of the past webinars, and sign up there, and we'll see you on October 7th, right after Windows 11 comes out. Very exciting time. And we also want you to head over to technado.com, or technado is apparently more secure because it is not a top-level domain. So head over to technado.do. You can send us that listener mail. Let us know what you want us to talk about, and like puppets, we will do it. And we'll send you a shirt for that. And also hit that big orange button in the corner that says sponsored by IT Pro TV. You can get 30% off the lifetime of your personal membership with coupon code from Technado, and get all that good learning for cheaper. And you can also request a demo for your team and see all the cool features available for teams, like the Pro Portal available from IT Pro TV. So check that out over at technado.com. All right, thanks, guys. Good to have you back, Don. No knock on Wes, Ronnie, Chris, our other great fill-ins, but it is nice to have you back in the studio.
yeah, it's I always try and be here for Technado as much as I can. Just had a few things pop up that Made
Likely story.
What, they didn't have the internet where you were?
well, the hotel internet was absolutely terrible, as it typically is.
Especially through that VPN you're using.
Yeah.
We should have just had you on Teams. Oh, Don said.
Yeah.
And just read off your...
I'm just reading what Don's putting right now.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, guys. Thank you so much again to our guest, Richard Spires. I appreciate your insight there. And thank you all for watching. We'll see you next week right here on Technado with Don Pizzette.